Start the recording and say, welcome, Jeremy. If you want to introduce yourself and get going, we can start. And thank you very much.
Thank you for the introduction. So I'm here to talk with you today about some projects that we've done at the American Women's College at Bay Path University around the development of wraparound supports for our students. And that's really through an internal partnership with frontline staff members, our institutional research group, and information technology. So before getting into what the projects were, and then we'll have a second part of the session today where we brainstorm together ways that this might work in your context. I did want to just do a brief introduction of who I am, and then I'll ask a little bit about who you are so I understand better and can tweak a little bit as I go along what I might speak to. So I am Deputy Chief of Analytics and Technology Transformation at Bay Path University. I oversee institutional research, analytics, our instructional design, our online support, some of our technology infrastructure. So kind of a diverse portfolio there. The American Women's College, which is the predominantly online adult serving branch of the university, is low cost. It's meant to be high quality to increase equitable access for underserved populations. We do have about 1,600 students who are enrolled. They are predominantly adult working, their parents, socially and financially diverse. So our goal really is to expand their access and make sure that they're finding ways for personal and professional advancement. What we've been able to attain through some of the strategies that I'm going to talk about today are outcomes. So when we think about persistence and graduation rates, these are 20% over the national average for adult serving institutions, according to NSC data compared to our internal statistics for our population. So this is what I'm here to say is best practice. We've found this in research. We continue to research elements of our model, and we can kind of tell you how each of these contributes to that overall success. So what my hope for today is that you take some of these ideas and you're able to replicate and bring them to your institution, maybe not in the same exact way, because we do have a centrally course managed model, but working with faculty if you're in a more traditional model, and even if you do have professional advisors, there's lots of different ways you can use the tools that I'm going to put here in front of you. So that's what we'll spend the second half of today, is kind of thinking about how what I'm going to talk about can be contextualized for your environment. So that is who I am. That's where I'm working. If you hear anything during the session that you really like, I would love to hear about it on Twitter. The QM East Regional hashtag, certainly for the whole event. The student support one is one that I just selected. It aligns pretty well with this session. And then you can @ me if you want to have a dialogue there. So our session objectives today, first thing I just want to kind of walk through what the relative areas of expertise of those three stakeholder groups I mentioned earlier are, at least in the American Women's College / Bay Path University. It may be slightly different in your organization. The second thing is I want to show you two projects that we developed at the American Women's College using the relative strengths of those different stakeholder groups. And then the third is, again, for you to think about how this kind of model might work for your institution. And again, we will have a shared document that I'll send out through Twitter, and it's available here. It's been shared through the QM portal, just up where we can continue to keep dialogue flowing. So that will be a shared document that the whole world can take a look at. So before we get started, I wanted to just know a little bit more about who you are. So this is a Poll Everywhere poll. You can point your web browser to pollev.com/AndersonJER, or if you're using your device, your mobile device, you can text my name Anderson JER to 37607. So I'll just give that a moment for folks to get all synced up, and I'll actually do it myself just to make sure it's working. And it doesn't look like it is. Oh, we got one, we got me. There we go.
I got in too. I'll post the link in the URL, in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you.
I was the other.
And if you're not able, if you're just in the chat, that's fine too. I'm kind of looking at both things as we go. I do see we have another faculty member. So it's relatively split. We do have a good number of faculty members here, which is good. So this wasn't exactly as I was expecting. I was thinking we were going to get more in the instructional design administrator, that kind of area. So this is a good mix. And what I like about understanding that we have a good number of faculty with us today is, as I'm talking about this, anytime I say professional advisors, that's language that I'm likely to slip into. That does mean, in general, advising team members, and all of the tools that I'm going to talk about, if I don't say it explicitly, they can be used by a variety of different types of stakeholders. So while professional advising at my institution, certainly faculty advisors could be using the same tools. So that's good to know, and I appreciate you sharing that. The next thing I want to know is just a little bit more about how you interact with the different types of support services at your institution. This will give me a sense when we get to the second half of the session, what ideas you may or may not be bringing into the discussion. So again, you can just text in. I'm really excited to hear about the folks who are in very regular contact. The folks who maybe 1 to 2 times an academic session, this will be hopefully a good time for you to be expanding your thoughts about how you might interact more regularly. So that's good information, the student support staff. The next question is, and sorry to move it forward, just to make sure we're staying on track here. So the next question is specific to IT, including instructional design. And then we'll have one more so I can understand how you're interacting with institutional research as well. All right. Kind of falling into the same category of the 1 to 2 times a month. Or no, I'm sorry, this one's a little bit more frequent, 1 to 2 times a month rather than 1 to 2 times an academic session. Okay, great. And the last one is institutional research. How often are you interacting with institutional research on student success initiatives? This one is not surprising to me. When I came to oversee IR, this office mainly was meant to be, or had been designed as such, to be an executive-facing position that would help make strategic decisions. And that's something that I've been very clear about, that I want this role to be working much more regularly with faculty, with frontline staff. So this is something that if you don't have that kind of access, which it looks like many are not yet, this could be a good case study for you to bring back to your institution and talk about reimagining this kind of interaction. All right, so this is very helpful, not necessarily totally different than what I was expecting, but it certainly helps me understand what the group is looking like here. So this is really our first objective. I want to describe for you the 3 stakeholder groups at my institution and where they each kind of fit, and then we'll talk through some of the examples of how they've actually collaborated in practice. So the first group is our student support services. These are the students who are really our frontline advisors. So they're not only going to be helping during registration, during a drop, that's kind of the big heavy time, but throughout the session, they're also intervening, proactively reaching out to students, giving mentorship. And then they're also the ones who are really designing all sorts of programming, like our onboarding program. We have a specific course for that. We have our orientation sessions that they own. And then they also, a really key important piece of their job is, as students need it, they connect the student to other services like counseling or tutoring, so on and so forth. So they really are the student's main point of contact for their 4 years with us at the institution. And faculty, individual faculties do come and go, as different courses are taken. This person, their quote unquote advisor will be the one who stays with them their whole time. So the next group that we've added to the mix is institutional research. The core competency of this group is really understanding what data are available at the institution, making sure those data are highly usable. So the definitions are well known by different stakeholders, that the data are clean, that they're collected, that they're analyzed, that they're being reported appropriately. That's really kind of the wheelhouse of IR. And that's why in a lot of institutions, it's more of an executive facing group, or it's working with external accreditors, or doing iPads for national reporting. So that's kind of the traditional mode of IR. The competencies that we see here are still the competencies in the IR office that reports to me. We've just expanded those services to other stakeholder groups beyond executive staff. And then IT, we're going to exclude for now instructional designs. These are really the folks who are the ones who get deep down and dirty with the data. So they're taking it out of the source systems, they're transforming it and merging it into different databases, and then they're disseminating it to different stakeholders. So these are the folks who really, once they've worked with IR, are structuring the data and making it useful for end users. So in our context, that also means developing the dashboards, for example, or the reports that would go into stakeholder hands. So those are the three stakeholders. And when we start to think about an overall model for the way that we use data to create these wraparound supports, we do have a whole lot of data sources. And this is a space really where IR works with the stakeholder groups, like advising, to understand what those data are and how they can be used. Then IT comes into the picture. They're going to be the ones who, kind of co-locate all of that data and then push it out into reports that IR works with end users like our advising team to understand what these reports mean and how they can be turned into action. So it's really a big cycle here where each of those stakeholders has a very important role to play. Now, the first piece that I want to talk about, first example, is a predictive dashboard that we created. And it was really in service of a stakeholder question coming from our advising team. They have roughly 250 students each advisor who they oversee and to whom they deliver services. And that's a large caseload. So the question that they're facing is, how do we do that effectively and efficiently with the resources that we have, knowing that we need to sustain high levels of persistence to graduation and improve them year over year. That is a stated goal at the American Women's College. So that was the kind of the use case, that was the challenge that we were facing. And that's where IR and IT came into the picture. So IR came and said, listen, we have a whole lot of different data sources that we're looking at currently to answer questions just like this for executive staff members. So we've been capturing data, for example, for a long time from our learning management system, which is Canvas, our student information system, we're Genzabar. We also have an adaptive learning system, Realize It. And all of these data sources we've used to create predictions in the past, again, much more from an executive lens. Now we're looking to translate this for frontline staff members to make their jobs easier at supporting students. So this was IR's contribution, letting us know what data sources were available, and some examples just to kind of dig down one level down. There were things like the number of posts that a student might make in a discussion, or the word length of those posts. And we actually looked at it from two different perspectives, and IR helped us along with this. So the first perspective is to compare a student to her colleagues in a course at a given moment in time. So if she's posting fewer posts than other students, that's a potential concern. But then the other lens we looked at is a student also has kind of a longitudinal behavior. So she just may, from course to course post fewer. She still persists, she still achieves. But it's when that pattern changes over time, we've got another warning flag. So we look at each of these different predictors from those two lenses, comparing student to class and then student to self over time. So IR helped us with that. And then IT came and said, all right, we know what all of these data are, we know where they come from, we know how to collect it, and we know how to join it all on that individual student. So that's where IT really came together. And then the last step that they took was, after building that data model, they helped translate it into a dashboard that end users were going to use. And that dashboard ended up looking like this, where on the side, what you had is an overall, and I'm sorry, I had to block out the student names, but you would have student names down the left-hand side, and then their engagement scores. The green obviously means good engagement, yellow, you're kind of in the warning zone, and then if you have red, this is a student who the advisor would want to be reaching out to. So that was kind of the 10,000-foot view. If you don't know anything else about a student's engagement, that number would help you right there. Over on the right-hand side, though, we provided the 6 powerful predictors, is what we called them, after doing the predictive analysis with IR. They honed in on 6 of those variables that were really predictive of whether or not a student was going to persist in a particular course. So you get, for example, we talked about the number of posts that a student was making, or how many assignments have been turned in on time compared to colleagues in the course. So in any event, we created this dashboard, and our advising team now goes in and uses this dashboard to inform outreach to students. What's really cool is if you have, let's say, a bucket of 10 students who are in the red, we've also made it so that you can export this list and bulk upload it into our customer relationship management system. If you don't have a CRM, we use Salesforce. You could still get that list of students and do, a blast email through BCC. So that can still work. Again, depending on what your context might be. So this was our first project. The only other thing that I want to emphasize is that we used the Agile approach to developing this dashboard, where really we sat down, the 3 groups came together, we went through what the requirements were, really what's the goal of the advising team. There was a design where we did a wireframe, so we didn't develop the whole dashboard, it was just here's what we're thinking it'll look like, and that was just in Microsoft Word. So advisors kind of vetted it, then IT and IR went to do the actual development. We tested it to make sure the data looked clean. This was actually a step where we heard feedback that, well, these predictive values don't make any sense to us in advising. So we tweaked it. IR worked with them to redefine how those predictive scores were being presented. We deployed it, continued developing it, deployed it, and we continue to go through this cycle where we layer in additional functionality over time. So this approach, the reason why I say it is, we start kind of with the absolute most basic, and that's a quality that I want to share with you later on. You don't have to go out of the gate and have something totally developed like this. You can do something quick and dirty, and there's actually a project we just did to that effect with our traditional undergraduate population, where we pulled just the login counts for our LMS when we moved over to all remote learning because of COVID-19. So that was super quick and dirty. It took about an hour to develop that report versus months to develop this dashboard. So there are different strategies if you take an agile approach of developing, a minimum product that you can improve over time. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to see if there are any questions about the first example, and then I'll breeze through our second so that we can get into the brainstorming portion. It looks like we do have one. Yeah.
You see the one question: what actions would you like to see IR taking with faculty and or designers?
Yeah. So this is a really good question. And it happened. It took a while for it to happen and to get there. But what I would like to see IR do when they've got a project like this is, rather than sit back in the office, which tends to be in each of the other institutions where I've been, that's kind of IR is modus operandi. You wait for a data request to come in. I would like to see IR out of the office, meeting with these stakeholder groups on a regular basis, asking them, what data do you need in order to do your job better? And it's a couple of those kinds of conversations, and before you know it, you're going to have a laundry list a mile long, which is so much better than not engaging and not having an idea of what folks are lacking for insight. So I think it's much more on the institutional research to be proactive and making the business case for why they could be helpful to these different stakeholders. That's a really good question. All right, so I'm going to mark that as answered. If there are any other questions, you can continue to use the Q&A. But let's move on really quickly to the second example here. So this one was a slightly different look, but very, very similar data. So this question came to us, rather than looking at it at a student level, let's aggregate it by a course. So we're going to see, for example, in a moment here, our Bio 109. This is our intro bio course. We redeveloped it, added a whole bunch of new tools. Is it accomplishing what we were hoping it would accomplish? So that's the question from our frontline practitioners, our advising team, our instructional designers, our technology support group, because those are really all the folks who are fielding the questions and supporting students to success in these courses. So again, IR was able to come in and say, we absolutely can take that same data we just worked with you on at the student level, we can aggregate it by the course, and then we can start to use descriptive statistics like finding the averages of things and put it in front of you so you can see how a course is performing. And then IT said, oh, this is going to be super easy because we already have this data in a database. Now we just need to, instead of looking at it with a view of a student, we need to create a new view of it with the course ID from the LMS rather than the student ID from the LMS. So for them, the second project went a lot more quickly. So that was the basic use case. Now, this was the product that we came up with, and what I want to kind of walk you through here is each of the panels. So we did a distribution of what the course grades were, so A through F. That gave a good histogram idea of how students are performing. We also did a box plot just showing the min max and what the interquartile range was. So again, you can see that grades kind of clump up here, and then we do have kind of this would be a positive skew here. And then these other panels along the bottom, those are going to be participation counts by discussion board. So we can see, for example, like week 1 performed really well, but the icebreaker wasn't used all that much. So maybe we need to go back and beef up the way that we've designed that icebreaker. In this panel here, it's the on-timeness is what I call it. And our data architect is always telling me that's not a word, but it's really, did the student turn in assignments in on time? Were they late, or are they unsubmitted? So you can kind of get a breakdown there. Again, we noticed, and I could bring up an English course, we noticed that there was this 1 week in our English course where on time dropped like a stone. So we went to look at the course, and the way it had been designed, we run in an accelerated format. So assignments are due on Saturday, our discussions are on Thursday. We were asking students to do a peer review between Thursday and Saturday, not only do the peer review, but also revise. So the number of students who turned that in on time was like 10%. So we knew we had to go back and do a redesign of that. And it was very stark on this dashboard. This panel up here is going to walk you through what the average score was assignment by assignment. So again, if I'm looking at places where I'm going to want to focus my redesign efforts, these 3 assignments right here where the average scores down around 60, we want to see it, probably closer up around 75 to 80 would be our target. That's our level of mastery. And then this middle section here is just key performance indicators that we talked about as a group. So course average, what's the DFW rate, so on and so forth. So again, the way that worked is we came in, we had kind of the needs analysis, we had institutional research, being the one to define what these KPIs would be. These are values that they work on all the time when they're analyzing how programs are performing for assessment purposes. So it layered in very naturally. Somebody like an instructional designer, though, wants to be able to hone in and see which assignment is contributing to that overall outcome. So our instructional designers, our faculty members have absolutely loved getting down to the assignment by assignment, discussion by discussion level. And again, this was IT working in the background to just break out the data into these respective views that we have here. So that was the second example. I just want to open it up again if there are questions about this one, because I do want to save some time here where we can begin to do some group brainstorming and then bring it back for overall thoughts.
There was a question of what your LMS is.
Yeah, this is a good question. So we're in Canvas right now, and a lot of this information, so if I go back to this dashboard, a lot of this information is available in stock reports, or even within a course, you would have to go into the course settings, and then there's course analytics. So a lot of these visualizations were actually lifted. Hopefully nobody from instructors on the call right now, but we lifted some of these visualizations right from their interface because faculty loved the way that they were represented. Now, just because we're on Canvas, though, doesn't mean this won't work with other LMSs. Previously, I was at a Blackboard institution. Blackboard has very similar out-of-the-box reports. So, an instructional designer or an LMS administrator or somebody else in IT would be able to help you find those reports and then download them. The real challenge, and it's not a huge barrier to overcome, is figuring out how to slice and dice that data so you can look at just your course. And this will be a quick plug, but next week I'm doing an OLC Ideate session on that very topic, like how do you take LMS data quick and dirty and start to do something with it. That's on next Tuesday. So quick plug for that if you want to learn more, but that's not necessarily what we're here for today. Were there any other questions? Because I do want to get to hear what all of your thoughts are on how this could work at your institutions.
I am not seeing any. Someone else is saying they use Blackboard, so that was good.
Yeah. Nope, we're looking good. So this next part, then, we're going to do some brainstorming and sharing. And what I've done is broken it out into 3 questions. The first question is going to be just what data are available to you right now. So we've heard, for example, already that some institutions use Blackboard. So your LMS is certainly a data source. If you're looking for something like final grades, your student information system. So that might be DataTel or Ellucian or Genzabar or whatever the case may be. What I did to help you kind of start to think a little bit more broadly, though, I seeded in the document what BayPath has for data sources that we really like to use. So that might get some juices flowing. So that'll be the first question. And in a moment, I'll show you the URL that you can use to type into your browser and start to contribute. The second question, though, is to start to think about how IR and IT can help you with a project. And I've described a little bit about how IR and IT work at our institution, but I'm interested. Each office is different at each institution. So thinking through how it might look at your institution will be the second question. And then the third is, to just bring it home, where do we get started? What's a really small project that you could reach out to IT or IR on and just do something, get some minimum product delivered that'll help you do your job better to support students. So those are the 3 questions, and it all in one document, just different pages in that document. So we'll all type away together. So the first one, if you want to open up your web browser, a new window, this web link here, bit.ly/datasourceqm. And what I'll do is I'll leave that on the screen here, but I'm going to toggle over to the actual document here momentarily. So I'm going to leave that here, and in about 15 seconds, I'm going to move over to the document so we can see in live how we're contributing. What I'll do is I'll drop that in the chat too. Looks like somebody already.
I put the long URL in because it
Perfect.
resolved it before I could get the short one.
So this is the document here. No pressure.
See, there are 3 or 4 people in.
Yeah, I can see the anonymous duck wants to do something. So you can just click into the table down below. And if you don't want to identify your institution, you certainly don't have to do that. As I'm seeing the anonymous narwhal, which is my absolute favorite of all the creatures here in Google, when I see I'm going to assume that's the Center for Instruction, Learning, and Technology, maybe. But something that I didn't really mention earlier that this is causing me to think about is Quality Matters rubric scores are a data source that we have that I didn't even list here. They live only in spreadsheets, though. It's something we've talked about bringing into our dashboard. It's kind of like a pre-post type of data set. So that's something, we're all QM schools, so that's one of those data sources that you might want to take a look at. And what's kind of cool about that, especially if you're one of the faculty members on the call, over time, you're in there, you're redeveloping, you're adding new features to be able to go back and do a QM review year over year over year to kind of see the growth. That would be a really cool, data set. Again, not a huge one. You would have maybe 3 or 4 rubric scores over the years where you could go back and sit down and compare and see which areas are improving or which ones haven't improved as much. And again, it'll help you laser focus into what areas you might want to improve. So I see another Salesforce institution. Well, Quality Matters uses Salesforce. I didn't know that. That's neat. All right, so I do see a couple of other institutions in here or other users floating around in here. If you do have thoughts, I'll just give it another minute here, but it looks like we are winding down. The jackalope almost wanted to do something at one point. I'm really interested to hear more about the Quality Matters stuff and what you guys have been doing. Because I think you're the only other one who can talk right now, right?
I am. I can make other people talk. If somebody else wants to talk, we can talk. I mean, we're just implementing Salesforce as we right now. And obviously we don't have students, but we have institutions who we serve, and then we look. I mean, from our own, we're moving to Canvas, so we'll be using a lot of that for any of our professional development.
I'm interested, where my interest comes is the professional development side. There may be institutions here who are, and I didn't even ask this question, but continuing ed units who offer very similar professional development opportunities. As I've talked with them, they want the same type of information, the same types of support for students, and those units typically haven't gotten it. So I'm just wondering if Quality Matters has thought at all about how it uses that would be available to do outreach to folks who may be enrolled in courses but maybe aren't finishing them. So it's an interesting thought.
That's a good point. I have to gonna check with Brenda, who is our professional development lead, to see what, because I know we're just launching Canvas, which has a more robust, reporting sign.
Yep.
Blackhawk Technical College has never heard of Salesforce.
Salesforce, and I mentioned CRM earlier. There's different ones. There's I'm blanking on what some of their names are. There's EAB. I saw somebody here mention Starfish. It's a very similar where you're creating cases for students. There's early alerts, and then you act on them. You type in notes. We also use it, though, not just in advising like we're talking about here today. We use it through admissions. So as students are being worked by our admissions counselors, they're typing in notes. Might be about, because we are a very diverse student population, things about financial aid, concerns about coming back to school, what prior experience they've had with learning. All of that information then gets moved along to our advising team and our careers group, who can see the same information and then begin to add in additional views of how that student is performing. So it's a really robust tool as you start to take data out of that one, because then you can start to see how often the student is interacting with different staff members at the institution. And particularly when you're talking online, that can be a real concern because of the potential isolation of distance that we have with our students. So that's something that we definitely take a look at, is how often folks are interacting. So if anybody, I would love to hear from Black Hawk or Grand Rapids. I see you both typing away here. So if you wanted to raise your hand and just share any of these thoughts, the early alert I'm seeing for Grand Rapids, and then the Black Hawk Technical College, who's using Starfish. We kind of are going through this right now where we're starting to report on this ourselves, IR working with advisors again. I'm really interested to hear what you may or may not be doing. So if you do have some thoughts, maybe just raise your hand and we can share.
If someone raises their hand, I can, or identifies who they are, because Anonymous Norwal is not listed under my list of attendees, then I can give you speaking rights. Someone raise their hand. I will allow Mosalata. Probably said their name wrong, but you are now free to talk if you unmute yourself.
Hi, I think you said it right. You said it slowly enough that it all sounded correct.
Oh, okay, good.
Hi, I'm Moore Salata. I am a faculty member at Grand Rapids Community College in Michigan. And we use early alert is one of the things that I really enjoy as a faculty member. It's been integrated into our Blackboard system. And so it allows you to raise a flag on students for any number of concerns you may have. And the feedback is automatic and really quick. And I know whenever I use that system, I usually get some kind of attention from the student that I haven't been able to get before. So that's one way that we try to make sure that students have, it's automatic, but it's also attached to real people, so they don't just get lost in a sea of emails saying there's a concern somewhere. There's usually a follow-up depending on what the issue is from a specific like an advisor, or we have a counselor. We have the academic advisors, and we have personal, and then we have career. So depending on what flag you raise, that student will get a follow-up email, phone call, and even I think something in the mail if they don't respond.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that information. It's very similar to what we were seeing at BayPath, where again, you might have 4 or 5 different types of offices interacting with that student who's getting that early alert, depending on if it's like an academic concern, or maybe there's a counseling concern. Attendance would, go to, potentially even another person like the dean. So we were getting these alerts that were going to multiple stakeholders. We never knew, though, if we took a step back, 10,000 foot view, how many alerts does that student have in total And what we were finding is there were, frequent flyers who might have had 10 or so early alerts in their first couple of semesters with us. And we were missing that trend because even though folks were, doing their interventions as each one came up, nobody was saying, oh, hey, I've got the same student who's got this issue too. So we were able, as we started to bring that data together from a different lens, again, rather than looking at a case level, looking at a student level, then we were able to say, all right, well, we can recontextualize this, and maybe this group of students who have multiple early alerts, we need to interact with a little bit differently. So there's now this group called, it's the worst acronym ever. So I'm going to spell it out and not say it. It's SIST, the Student Intervention something team. But that's their whole goal, is to look at that group of students who have multiple early alerts and work with them more robustly. So early alerts is a really cool data point. And then was there anybody else who wanted to share? It might have looked like Rubina.
Yeah, I was gonna unmute Rubina. No, where did she went up here. So I will unmute you. You should be able to talk. If you might have to unmute yourself. Maybe.
No pressure. What remind me again, what time does this session end?
2:10.
All right, so let's move on to the next one, and maybe
3:10.
we'll have some, maybe we'll have some other thoughts that folks might want to share. So the next one, I'm just going to scroll down, and you can too. The next question is, how can IR and or IT, and you don't have to answer both. I'll start to type in my responses here too for BayPath, and you don't have to identify yourself at all by institution in this area. This is much more to kind of crowd think different ways that we can work with these offices. So, so yeah, as you scroll down, just start to add into that area too. I'll mute myself so you don't hear me typing away. This one might be harder. If anybody, again, so if you want to talk through this live, just raise your hand. I'm glad to hear thoughts too.
I'm not sure how to. Oh yeah, now.
I think I unmuted myself.
Good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yep. Go for it.
I would absolutely agree with you. I've really appreciated not only your comments, but from the colleague in Grand Rapids as well. It's the interaction. It's partly this belief that faculty were the people that are the direct line workers. And if we have the best data that's available, that's how we partly help the organization be successful. But most importantly, that we serve the needs of our students most efficiently. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that thought. And I'll share and validate for my own experience that what we are finding is, especially when IR was removed from that front line, they were looking at data kind of in almost like a sanitary way and interpreting it from their own lens and then reporting it to executive staff. That's dangerous, because IR is not the one delivering the course, is not the one working to support the students to persistence. you really need that voice coming in from the front lines, from the faculty members, from the advising team, from the instructional designers, to give meaning to what that data says. So getting IR to work with these groups just adds a richness then of the feedback to executive staff too. So it's just done really, really amazing things for our organization to, to be rejiggering how all of these groups work together. The comment or the piece that I'm adding in here for how IR, or rather how IT can support, this is important, and I hope it's a takeaway. Again, you don't have to be super complex in building like a full dashboard. They can help you with the canned reports that already live in systems like Starfish or in Salesforce or your LMS, whether it be Blackboard or Moodle or Canvas. These systems have all kind of built in usable reports. It's just sitting down with somebody to say, all right, I only want to see my 5 courses, so how do I filter that all out? So that's something that IT can certainly do. And that's a real strength of our IT department. So I'm gonna stop there. We have some good thoughts on how IT and IR might contribute. The last question, if you scroll down one more time, is just how do we start small? So I'm going to share that example that I was telling you about that I'll be bringing to OLC next week in their OLC IDA saloon. But if you have other small ideas or early steps, or if you even have a more robust thing in place already, please do share, because this document I'll post out to Twitter and LinkedIn and all of that to hopefully get even more institutions who didn't participate on this call involved.
And we have about 4 minutes, but we have then a 20-minute break. So if we run a little bit over, we're just cutting into the snacks that you have to go and make yourself, virtual snacks.
There's a really good comment here in the chat about the backgrounds that we come to higher ed with versus the experiences that our students have, and that is certainly something that resonates in my household, and I know with the students who I serve at the American Women's College, and it's one of the reasons why, for me, having access to data and being able to put that into all different stakeholders' hands is so vital. If we wait for students who are first generation to raise their hands, we may lose them before they raise their hand, because they're not aware of what resources are available at the college or how to engage them. So, so to make sure that our faculty members, our advisors are well equipped to be doing proactive outreach so that our students don't fall into the pit, it's critical. And that's one of the ways that, I started this by saying it's one of the ways that we've achieved the type of outcomes we have when you compare to the national average for persistence and graduation. So, so I know that we're coming up here, and we have only the how can I start small. I popped in the example that I have. I would love it if you have a little bit more time at some point to come back to this document and add something in, even if it's, weeks from now. I do want this to be something that I can share with other stakeholder groups. It'll be something that I bring internally too, to just kind of show our instructional designers, our institutional research, our IT department, this is what's happening in other institutions. So lots of good can come from this. We are, though, at the, I think, kind of last minute wrap up. So the closing thoughts, I did want to thank everybody for coming today, for your contributions to our document and to our brainstorming. I hope that you did get at least one idea that you can go back and start to work with somebody to put more data into your hands to work with that wraparound support for your students, just like we have at the American Women's College at BayPath. If you do want to continue the conversation, please do. I'm on Twitter. You can email me certainly as well. Again, this will be posted in the QM portal, so you can always come back to this if you want to find how to contact me. So thank you, everybody. And are there any other comments or questions before we go? It looks like the QA is clear, and we've got some thank yous from the folks on the other end. So, all right, so I think that's it. If you have questions, please be in touch, though.
All right, thank you, Jeremy.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to stop the recording.